The debate cheerleading as a sport is always a touchy subject. Anytime I wear my uniform to school, at least one person brings it up. If it's a talk with a teacher, a comment made down the hallway, or even a football player just talking about their game tonight. Well, today is the day that this debate ends between this class. Not only am I going to be talking to you about why cheerleading is a sport, I will convince you that cheerleading is one of the most rigorous sports. Just like any other sport, cheerleading requires dedication, time management, and strong physical and mental aspects. What makes this sport the most rigorous is the score sheet, the time to show off your skills, and the endurance needed to compete a whole routine. At the beginning of this unit, I took a survey on how this class felt about this topic. Although all of you were interested in this, only one of you agreed that cheerleading is the most rigorous sport, leaving over half of you, more specifically 58.8% of you, to disagree with my statement. So this is my time to prove to you that cheerleading is one of the most rigorous sports to participate in. First, let's establish that cheerleading is a sport because I know that some of you can fight me on this one. According to the Women's Sports Foundation, to be a sport, a team has to meet these requirements. It must be a physical activity which involves propelling a mass through space or overcoming the resistance of a mass. When cheerleaders tumble and stunt, they're doing both propelling mass through space and resisting mass. So check. Next, you have to compete against or with a team. Whenever you have cheerleading competitions, you do this. Check. It must be governed by rules that explicitly define the time, space, and purpose of the contest and conditions under which a winner is declared. The rules of cheerleading are more complex than it may seem. There are specific time limits, spacing rules, and purpose to the score sheet, which I'll talk about later. So check. And lastly, acknowledgement that the primary purpose of a competition is comparison of the relative skills of the participants. Cheerleading is all about showing off the talent each athlete has, so check. Unlike any other sport, these athletes compete against one another to prove that they're the most composed, talented, precise as possible, and therefore making cheerleading a sport. Now that it's understood that cheerleading is a sport, I can prove to you why it's the most rigorous sport. Cheerleading is very dangerous. Flipping girls in the air, trying to catch them, learning new things without dropping the flyer is all very tricky. Never mind the fact that in this routine, when it's performed, the girls are being tossed and girls are tossing themselves. The term rigorous is defined as harsh, severe, exercising, exhaustive, and precise from the Merriam-Webster. According to the 2012 report and a policy statement by the American Academy of Pediatrics, cheerleading accounted for 65% of direct catastrophic injuries to the girl athletes at the high school level and 70.8% at the college level. They consider catastrophic injuries as trauma directly relating to the sport or indirect injury like heart failure or heat strokes. This number is strikingly high. With tossing girls in the air and attempting to catch them with the correct grips to do another twist or flip or extension, it requires a lot of trust between the bases, flyers, and backspots. This requires a strong team bonding. If each athlete doesn't trust one another or they aren't on the same page, then there is a great potential that the stunt will fail to be completed. This is where mental blocks start. If an athlete isn't confident in their skills, there's a good chance that this will cause them anxiety and they will become mentally challenged with throwing it. So most cheerleaders get mental blocks whenever they tumble rather than whenever they stunt. Mental blocks can also come from fear of failure, fear of injury, or trying to be a little bit too perfect. An article that was describing mental blocks stated, in reality, sports are 100% mental. Our thoughts influence our actions, and our actions influence our thoughts. This never-ending cycle often leads athletes to coaches to attribute poor performance in practice and competition to thinking too much. It's not always easy learning new tumbling passes and trusting your body to handle getting around and landing safely. Tumbling requires lots of coordination and practice before a skill can be thrown. When a spotter is taken away and now it's all on the athlete to complete the skill, it's scarier than some may think. And giving 100% from start to finish of the routine with skills that athletes aren't always 100% can be mentally exhausting. It's not always easy trying to convince your brain you can do it, you're halfway done, just push through, this last tumbling pass. Once this routine is over, you can rest. Although danger and mentality are a huge part of making cheerleading what it is, those two things are far from everything. This sport is all about being particular, sharp, clean, and crisp. The score sheet is probably the biggest part of cheerleading. It has what needs to be composed in every routine for every level. There are many different categories that is on the routine that's judged. The stunt technique and difficulty, pyramid technique and difficulty, standing tumbling technique and difficulty, running tumbling technique and difficulty, jumps, basket tosses technique and difficulty, pyramid creativity, stunt creativity, dance, and performance, and routine composition. All these together make the score sheet out of 100 points. Some of the things that the judges typically count off on are pointing toes in your jumps, having smoother transitions from spot to spot, keeping legs together, and having body control on tumbling and staying together. While having to chuck people in the air, tumble, incorporate all of these other skills on the score sheet while making every move perfect is very rigorous. Not only do all of these skills need to be completed in one routine, but they need to be performed within 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Never mind the fact that this has to be done with lots of makeup, a tight uniform, and a big bow. All of this calls for lots of endurance since every athlete has to be moving at all times in order to make the score sheet as high as possible. Many people will say, well, it's only 2 minutes and 30 seconds, it really can't be that hard. But if you think about it, it's almost an advantage to have more time in a sport. For example, in basketball, there can be timeouts to go over the game plan, subbing players in so that other players can get breathing time and catch a break, and a chance to make a comeback. With cheerleading, the plan is the plan and there's no going back, no tweaks, it is what it is. The coach can't tell the athlete what to do if a stunt falls in the middle of a routine, and there are no extra players to sub in, and once the routine is performed, that's the final score that you can receive. So, cheerleading is tough, and it's one of the most rigorous sports for a reason. This sport needs to have more attention brought to it because of its intensity and call for endurance of athletes. So by the end of this, I hope that you've all realized that cheerleading is more than just waving pom-poms and doing kicks on the sideline. Cheerleading is a mental and physical game that requires talent, athleticism, and time. Thank you for listening to my speech, and I hope that after hearing this presentation, the 58.8% of you that believe that cheerleading is not the most rigorous sport have finally changed your mind.